Well, Kathy, they don't often let cameras inside the Sellafield site. And that's partly because there's a long legacy here of dealing with the atomic waste dating right back to an ultra-secretive weapons program that was centred here. But there's also a legacy of secrecy here at Sellafield. And that's important because it's been blamed for successive managers of this site failing to deliver complex decommissioning projects on time and on budget. But is all that about to change? Because our cameras were allowed the first ever access inside the most challenging decommissioning project here. But to get there, we had to go inside the most controlled area of this zone. This is the single most hazardous building at the Sellafield complex. The Magnox Swarf storage silo was built in the 1960s to house thousands of tons of highly radioactive waste. Now it's crumbling. Cracks have allowed waste to leak into the ground beneath. The structure is having to be shored up to keep it safe. Our camera is the first to have been allowed inside. Beneath my feet is a silo big enough to hold 6 double-decker buses filled to the brim with some of the most dangerous radioactive waste in the world, and there's a lot of it. There are 22 silos like this in this entire building, housing 8 to 10 times more radioactivity than was released by the Chernobyl disaster. But the problem for Sellafield, and it is a big problem, this ageing building can't hold the waste for much longer. It is, in their own words, an intolerable risk. The chirruping noises are radiation dose meters worn by everyone on site. Levels here are about 10 times higher than normal. Perfectly safe, but under the 2.5 meters of concrete shielding us, doses would be fatal. This previously unbroadcast footage shows workers lowering a camera into a silo. The waste is mostly magnesium alloy mixed with uranium oxide fuel. Not only is it radioactive, the magnesium is chemically reactive. Underwater, it produces heat and hydrogen, which is explosive.
So all of those factors together means that this isn't the simplest job that the NDA has to do.
Isn't it simple? It sounds like a nightmare.
I don't think it's a nightmare. I think it's a challenging technical piece of work that we have to do.
Given those challenges, last year Sellafield signed a £1.9 billion contract to build an entire industrial process to treat the waste and prepare it for storage. But almost straight away, projected costs and delivery dates started to slip. Today, Sellafield has announced it plans to abandon that contract. They say they've now found a simpler, quicker way to clean up the mess.
The amount of money we have spent on an approach that we are not going to use is relatively small. I mean, it is still millions of pounds. I'm not saying millions of pounds isn't a lot of money, but it's relatively small in terms of the overall programme. The simplicity of the new approach does result in a lower cost, but that's very much not our focus, and there's been no political pressure in that regard either. I can absolutely assure you of that. The focus is on getting the job done as rapidly as we can.
The decision to speed up the process stems from new research on exactly how the waste will behave outside the silo. And you're now as confident as you can be based on the science that you understand how it will behave, and you're confident to move forward with that step.
Certainly, our enhanced understanding of the chemistry has given a lot more confidence in proceeding with alternative options.
It's chemistry in a bucket, not a test tube. But they say they now know enough to store the waste on site without major risks. It will end up stacked in tens of thousands of 3-metre cubed steel boxes in this vast shielded storage building that's nearing completion. But the project will be under intense scrutiny. A government spending review is imminent and the costs here are eye-watering. Alone, nuclear decommissioning soaks up almost the entire budget of the Department of Energy and Climate Change. Most of it goes to Sellafield, with the entire clean-up projected to cost £54 billion. And costs have spiralled, going up £5 billion between 2013 and 2014 alone.
It's always regrettable when money's gone spent on something and then they have to change tack. But sometimes, and Sellafield's a great case in point, there will be scientific advances. What we're really keen to see is them to acknowledge as quickly as possible when something can change and make that change quickly, if you like, fail fast.
Now, none of these roof plugs have been moved for about 15 years or so, so They are seriously lodged in place.
Work is now well underway to free up the lids, but it will be a few years at least before any of the waste starts to come out. The pressure is on Sellafield to prove their science is right, and they can deliver. Time and money are no longer no object.
Well, joining me now is Rory O'Neill, who's Director of Stakeholder Relations for Sellafield Limited. That's the company that manages this site on behalf of the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. Now, Rory, you're selling this as good news today. You found hopefully a quicker way of doing a very challenging decommissioning job, but it will involve, if it goes through, severing contracts at cost to us, and you've already spent hundreds of millions of pounds on work on a different type of project you're now dropping. Isn't this just more of the same from the management of Sellafield?
No, this is a complete change, Tom. This is a very important day for us. As a result of the work that Sellafield Limited have done, with the encouragement and support of the government and our parent nuclear management partners, and lots of support from academia and scientists such as those at the National Nuclear Lab, what we've managed to do is identify a much simpler way of dealing with this material, which foreshortens the time that we need to clear out those buildings that you've been talking about earlier. That brings a massive saving for us in terms of reducing risk, and it also brings a massive cost saving as well. So we're really pleased. This is important news for us.
When at a time of financial pressure for the government, you guys come up and say, well, we can do something quicker, does that mean you're compromising safety? That's what everyone will want to know. Is this just as safe as it would have been before?
No, absolutely not. Safety, as well as returning an investment on the taxpayer investment at Sellafield, are two of our #1 priorities. We work very closely with the regulators, who are of course independent, the Environment Agency, the Office of Nuclear Regulation, to get them also to a position of comfort that this plan, not only is it quicker, not only is it simpler, but also actually it's safer. So it's a real win-win for us, and it's been a tremendous team effort by all involved.
Now, earlier this year, MPs accused the people who are formerly managing this site of astonishing problems with cost overruns and time delays of very urgent decommissioning projects underway here. Now that you've now since then fired that management consortium, are we going to see more improvements at Sellafield?
Well, nuclear management partners are still our parent, and they've been an integral part of driving forward this.
But they are leaving.
They are leaving, but part of their legacy will be this new approach. It's as a result of their support and their investment and the expertise they've brought that's allowed us all to get to this position where we're much more confident about this approach now, and we really believe we can drive a real saving for the taxpayer as well.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, Rory, for joining us. Now, coming up later in the programme, our report from the Chernobyl exclusion zone, where it's not as complex as a decommissioning project as here, but one that's far more urgent to put a new roof over the melted down reactor at the heart of the Chernobyl exclusion zone in Ukraine.